Now, let's be clear. Synchronicity is when you have a thought in your head
Right.
or something going on in your life, like you're looking for a job or you're looking for a spouse, and suddenly something comes towards you out of the blue that answers that question.
Okay.
So that's what synchronicity is.
Mm-hmm.
The synchronizing of an internal thought with an event that happens in your life that
Right.
brings you exactly what it is that you want.
Mm.
And all through my life, this has happened to me.
Okay.
And so when I came to do my PhD, I wanted to do it in a topic that I was fascinated by and that was something new.
Okay.
And so nobody was writing about synchronicity.
Right.
And I wanted to look at synchronicity to explain some of the stuff that's happened in my life.
Hello again, DC fam, and welcome back to another episode of the Deep Culture Podcast. This is Fadli, your host, and I hope you guys are doing well at home or wherever you are. Before we begin today's episode, I also just want to take a bit of time to share with you some news that this is going to actually be the final episode of the Deep Culture Season 1. That's right, guys. So for this season, I think it's about time we come to a close. It's a good time for me to refresh myself and also to think and restructure how this podcast is going to go about for Season 2. All right. So look forward to that. And if you guys want to keep up to date with what's going on for Season 2, you guys can follow us on our various social media links on YouTube or Instagram and Facebook. Otherwise, maybe in a month or two, that's when we'll be coming back with Season 2. So that, I got a bit of time to relax and also recharge, and then I'll come back with even more inspiring content for you guys, right? So that's just a bit of message here at the start. It's a bit emotional for me, but also now coming back to today's episode, the final episode for Season 1, I thought it would be nice to come full circle and bring in the person who kickstarted this whole journey for me when it comes to speaking, when it comes to meeting people and networking, because he has not only been a huge influence in my life, he's also been a mentor, he's also been my boss, and also at times like a second father to me with his advice and him being there as a supporter, right? So he is also a consultant, recognized all over the world, been over to over 56 countries doing consultancy work. He's also the only person with a grounded theory PhD in synchronicity and leadership, which is what we're going to be talking about today, more or less. And if you're wondering what is synchronicity, basically it is the science that goes behind the law of attraction. All right. So we're going to be touching a bit more on that. But first, let me introduce to you and welcome Mr. Philip Mary to the Deep Culture Podcast. Mr. Philip Mary, welcome.
A pleasure to be here, Fadli. Great to see you again, and really honored to be the last person on your Season 1 show.
Pleasure's all
great.
mine.
I watched your success with this, and I'm really, really pleased and happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting my invitation and deciding to come on. Because I think what you have here for us today is going to be a really interesting topic to discuss, and it'll be inspiring for the viewers and the streamers, and it's something that they can actually implement in their lives. So thank you.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right. So maybe we can start off with sharing a bit more about yourself, Philip. So what do you do?
Well, I'm a what the heck am I? I'm a human being, first and foremost. A human being who enjoys working with other human beings,
Right.
which all throughout my life has led me to choose jobs and roles that actually work alongside other people, helping other people be the best that they can be. And that means that I've been a family therapist. I work with delinquent children and teenagers in inner city London
Right.
in the 1970s. I went to Sri Lanka. I was a leadership consultant and leadership trainer in Sri Lanka. From Sri Lanka, went back to the UK and got even more into leadership. I found when I was in Sri Lanka, I really enjoyed training leaders and teams.
Right.
And said, that's what I want to do. So I went back to the UK, got jobs, first of all, with local government in London as a leadership trainer.
Okay.
And then found myself, 1 week I was teaching nursery nurse leaders.
Okay.
And the following week I was teaching Marks and Spencer's executives. So I got this great job in a place called Roffey Park,
Roffey Park,
in Sussex in the UK, where I, for 4 years, ran leadership and team programs for companies all over England and actually all over the world too.
Wow. Yeah.
From there,
Uh-huh.
I felt the call of Asia. So I loved Sri Lanka so much that I then went from Roffey Park, came back to Hong Kong working for Reuters,
Right.
the news agency, again as their leadership development manager. 2 years in Hong Kong, 2 years in Singapore. That brings us up to 1991.
Okay.
And then
That's
in
30 years ago.
1991, set up my own business, Philip Merry Consulting Group. I actually have two companies, Philip Merry Consulting Group and Global Leadership Academy. All of them focused on teams and leaders. And I've worked now in 61 countries.
61.
It's
sorry.
gone up since
Yeah.
last time I told you. I gave you 56 before, but now it's 61. And actually,
Wonderful,
next week
yeah.
I'm going to be in Zimbabwe
Okay.
virtually. So do I count that as 62? I don't know.
We can give you that, I think.
So yeah, that's roughly my life in a nutshell. I'm from the north of England, Yorkshire.
Yorkshire.
Grew up in Huddersfield. And for those football supporters, Huddersfield Town is the best team in England. If you count every Premiership team out, then Huddersfield Town's the best team. Actually, no, they're not.
Well, they were in the Premier League a couple of
They
seasons
were in the
ago.
Premier
They
League,
were.
yes, and you and I saw the game that took them up.
That's right.
But now we're languishing at the bottom of the Championship.
It's only been a game though, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but never mind. So that's my life in a nutshell.
Right.
All through my life, Fadli, as I've shared with you before, I like to keep up on the best and the latest thinking.
Okay.
I always, for myself, want to be the best that I can be
Right.
with new ideas and new thoughts and new ways of doing things. And I like to share that with people that I work with too.
Right.
Well, you said that I've got a PhD in synchronicity.
Right.
So let's start there, because
Okay.
what I learned from my PhD, and I did my PhD when I was 64 years old, so still, relatively young.
Lifelong student.
No, I thought I'd do my PhD later in my life,
Right.
because then I've got stuff to say. And I did it in synchronicity. Now, let's be clear. Synchronicity is when you have a thought in your head
Right.
or something going on in your life, like you're looking for a job or you're looking for a spouse, and suddenly something comes towards you out of the blue that answers that question.
Okay.
So that's what synchronicity is. The synchronizing of an internal thought with an event that happens in your life that
Right.
brings you exactly what it is that you want. And all through my life, this has happened to me.
Okay.
And so when I came to do my PhD, I wanted to do it in a topic that I was fascinated by and that was something new.
Okay.
And so nobody was writing about synchronicity.
Right.
And I wanted to look at synchronicity to explain some of the stuff that's happened in my life, and to share that. So I finished my PhD. I'm now writing a book and doing training programs to help you, me, your listeners out there, your viewers out there, really discover a magic formula. I think it's a magic formula
Right.
to really help you go that bit further in your life. So I have a book that's about to come out this year called The 9 Keys of Synchronicity,
9 keys.
which
okay.
is based
Yeah.
on my PhD, which actually puts together the factors that will help you begin to attract this even more to you in your life.
Right.
And so,
Okay.
shall I just go on? So, I did this because I think if you're going to teach stuff to people, you've really got to be interested in it yourself.
Right.
Don't just go out and do a market survey and say, oh, nobody's doing supervisor training,
Yeah.
so let's choose supervisor training. I've always worked on the notion that stuff that you share with other people, it fascinates you.
Right.
So I look back in my life and I began to notice that things seem to fall into place
Right.
in my life. So when I got into, for the first 8 years of my working life, I was a family therapist, marriage counselor in London.
Right.
Enjoyed that. But I also began to teach other students of family therapy and marriage counseling as a teacher.
Okay.
And I thought, this is quite fun. I like helping people do that. But then I got the call to go to Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say got the call to go to Sri Lanka, it's kind of interesting because synchronicity takes you on the journey of your life to discover and accentuate even more what it is that you're good at.
Okay.
So it helps you make creative decisions. It actually pushes you in a direction that is best for you,
Okay.
often against what is the right thing to do in a conservative sense. So when I worked in
Okay.
government in local authority in London, being a family therapist and a counsellor, my next stage up
Mm-hmm.
was about becoming a team leader
A team leader. Okay.
of other family therapists because
Right.
I was being offered jobs and I got 8 years experience. So they said, now time to step up into leadership.
Mm.
A little voice in my head said, no, that's not for you.
Okay.
And when I look back, I see that now as synchronicity. I didn't know at the time.
Mm.
All I knew was staying in a senior leadership position, supervising other social workers in London wasn't for me.
Okay.
And so I applied for a job in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
And my friends said, you're crazy. So synchronicity is about, I knew I wanted something more. And then suddenly when I saw this job, leadership trainer for the youth ministry in Sri Lanka,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was for me. When synchronicity happens to you, remember you got a thought in your head. My thought was, I want to do something different with my life.
Right.
And somehow as well, I think there was a thought about wanting to leave England
Okay.
and wanting to experience Asia. Just a thought.
Mm.
And then in front of me, this job came.
It's kind of like you attracted these things that fits.
That's, I think, what I would call it now. At the time, I didn't know that.
Right.
So I went to this amazing place. I mean, it was a volunteer job. I mean, it's a full-time professional job,
Yeah.
but you got paid the same as a local person.
Okay.
So I got paid $30 per month, folks.
Oof.
But loved my 2 years in Sri Lanka.
Mm.
And when I was there, I learnt what would become my focus for the next period of my life. In fact, for most of my life.
Right.
Because I noticed that there were foreign firms working in Sri Lanka with foreigners running the operation in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
Their job was to train Sri Lankans to take over from them.
Okay.
And they'd say to me, can't find any Sri Lankan leaders. And I thought, this is crazy. There are lots of Sri Lankan leaders. These guys and women say they can't find any.
Mm.
So it introduced me to the notion that your cultural values determine what you see. So an
Okay.
American thinks leadership looks different than a Chinese or a Singaporean or a
Right.
Sri Lankan.
Right.
So and I'll never forget that when I was in Sri Lanka again, synchronicity again.
Mm-hmm.
After a conversation with some of these expats, I determined that was what my life was going to be about.
Cross-cultural diversity.
Cross-cultural understanding in teams and leadership.
Right.
Now, I would look back now and say that I was guided.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the time, I didn't know. I was just choosing what seemed of interest to me.
Right.
But synchronicity helps you along a path that brings you what is the best thing that you can do with your life in serving the world, in working in the world.
Okay.
So synchronicity was that, bolt from the blue, which said, this is what you're interested in.
Mm.
Went back to the UK, and this is where, and you must stop me, Fadley, because I could talk forever
Sure.
about these things. So remember, I'd left a very good paying job
Mm-hmm.
as a social worker, family therapist in London.
Right.
And my friends said I was crazy
Okay.
to get off that ladder and go and work for £30 a month. But by doing that and following my instinct and following my intuition,
Mm-hmm.
I then got this job at this amazing business school in the UK.
Mm.
Now, I applied for that job. I'd never worked in a bank or a commercial situation at all. And so there were lots of people being interviewed
Mm-hmm.
who'd had like 10 years experience with different banks,
Top
different
credentials,
company.
yeah.
Top credentials. But they chose me.
Mm.
Now, when I'd been there for a while, I said to my boss, why did you choose me?
Yeah.
And he said, it's because you went to Sri Lanka.
Ah,
I
okay.
said, how? He said, well, that showed that you did something different with your life.
Mm,
You were prepared to turn your back on what you were doing
right.
and have a different mindset about what would be interesting.
Mm.
And in reality, that introduced me to cross-cultural training
Okay.
and was the reason I got the job, which for 4 years I was running 3 weeks out of every 4 training programs,
Mm-hmm.
which taught me how to be a leadership trainer and a leadership consultant. I see it now
Yeah.
as synchronicity,
Mm-hmm.
looking back.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know that. So does that begin to tell you a
Yeah.
little bit about what synchronicity is?
Yeah. That most definitely. And I think hearing it, it sounds to me like it's a bit of it's the way that life is guiding you towards
Yeah,
making a
it's
decision, and it's helping
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that what synchronicity also does?
It's like that, Fadli. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, and it's strange to kind of talk about because it steps into almost the spiritual
Mm.
in terms of life purpose and being authentic.
Yeah.
Because I think that synchronicity nudges you by giving you choices. You can say no to the choice.
Right.
I could have said, no, I'm going to stay in London and move up the ladder
Yeah.
in government,
Right.
local government in the UK. My life would be very different if I'd chosen that.
Mm-hmm.
But this instinct said, no, leave the post. And when the job came up in Sri Lanka, I said, yes, that's for me. And they all led me down the path. So those are about synchronicity in general. But synchronicity also can be very specific.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was at Roffey Park, the
Roffey Park,
business
yep.
school, I said after 4 years, now I want to get back to Asia.
Yeah.
I had this sense of calling. I want to go and experience fun
Mm.
and places where there are great cultures and great countries to go and visit.
Yep.
And so I applied for a job with the Hong Kong Bank
Okay.
in Hong Kong.
Oh, you
and-
traveled a lot.
yeah, and was rejected.
Mhm.
And they wrote back to me and said, Philip, we didn't give you the job. I said, why? He said, because you're too senior.
For the job. Too
Yeah,
senior for the
your
job.
job that you're doing at Roffey Park,
Right.
you're at a higher level than what we're recruiting for in
Mm.
Hong Kong. I said, I don't care. I just want to go to Hong Kong. I'll do the most menial jobs. I said, no, cannot. I went on holiday really pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
Came back from holiday. There was a telegram.
Mm.
Remember telegrams? Not faxes, but telegrams, which are
No idea
short
what that-
things. And the telegram said, Reuters,
Mhm.
the news agency, want to interview you for a job in Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'd been really disappointed 2 weeks
Wow,
before
yeah.
that I didn't get the job in Hong Kong with the Hong Kong Bank. 2 weeks later, Reuters headhunted me. I have no idea how they got my name,
Mm.
but they interviewed me for this job in Hong Kong, which was setting up the leadership training department
For Reuters?
for
In Hong Kong.
Reuters,
Wow.
for the whole of Asia.
Oh, so it's a regional.
Regional job.
Wow.
My district, I said to my boss at the time, so tell me again what my district is. They said, well, you have Japan over here, you have Cyprus over here, you've got New Zealand in between, down at the bottom.
Right.
All the countries in between are yours. Off you go. We don't care so long as people enjoy your training. So now, think about this.
Mhm.
I wanted the Hong Kong bank job in Hong Kong.
Right.
I later found out that was a very low-level training job, teaching programs that other people had designed.
Okay.
So there's no creativity. And you know me, I like to do new things.
Right.
And I like to create things.
Uh-huh.
I didn't get that. Somehow the universe, whatever you like to say is working here,
Mm.
blocked me from that job. To 2 weeks later, got a job which was a blank sheet of paper.
Right.
Reuters had no leadership training at all for the whole of Asia. My job was to design that.
And allowed you to express your creativity in your own
It
style.
fitted exactly who I was.
Yeah.
And so I developed from nothing
Mm.
leadership training for Asia for Reuters throughout
For Asia.
Asia. I now know, looking back, that was synchronicity guiding me. Major junction points in your life: getting married,
Yeah.
looking at a new job, thinking about moving home. Synchronicity comes calling.
Right.
Fast forward 4 years with Reuters. Loved my time with Reuters. 2 years in Hong Kong, 2 years in Singapore. Then came the time when my boss said to me, Philip, we have to let you go
Okay.
because training is finished. You've trained all of our staff.
Uh-huh.
We've got other people who've learned from you. It's time for me to move on. And obviously, I'd been thinking about running my own business for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Not a long time, for a year or so,
Okay.
because that's what I wanted to do,
Right.
to express myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay. But then I knew that if I'm running my own business,
Mm-hmm.
I need clients.
Right.
How the heck do you get clients? And how do you pay the rent?
Mm.
My boss came to me and said, yes, we need to let you go, but on the condition that in the first year of your new company,
Yeah.
you give us 50 days of training.
Mm.
There I was in my first year of setting up my company,
Yeah.
when most people struggle finding clients. I was being paid exactly the same amount of money working for Reuters for 50 days as Reuters paid me working for them
Wow.
full time.
Yeah.
Synchronicity again came to my aid, I think, is what it's all about. So, folks, do you begin to get the picture? It's like you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to have the courage to take the opportunity. But when you do the thing that you know your heart wants to do, it's as if somehow somebody's got your back.
Mm.
You have on your T-shirt,
Yeah.
if you can show that to the audience, Pronoya.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've told people about that before, but Pronoya comes from the Roman Empire.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And Pronoya is a word whereby individuals were chosen to shower with gifts.
Okay.
So for some reason, I don't know how it happened, but Pronoya was an institute or a concept in the Roman Empire where you were given gifts out of the blue. People just say, Fadley, here's $1,000.
Right.
Fadley, here's a farm. Fadley, here's your wife, or whatever it might be.
Okay.
And so Pronoya is, I think, which is why it's so great to be talking to you, Fadley.
Mm-hmm.
Pronoya is about life being on your side.
Yeah.
And synchronicity is exactly to do with
Right.
that, if you listen.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the broad
Sense of what synchronicity.
sense of synchronicity, or broad sense of how synchronicity helps you in the bigger decisions.
Mm.
But the interesting thing, it helps you with the little decisions too.
Right. Okay.
There I was, and stop me, Fadley, because you know I could talk forever. There I was in Pasir Panjang, running my company out of Pasir Panjang, looked at my books, and my book said, you need $15,000 to balance the books for this month.
Mm.
It was 10 minutes before 4 o'clock. How the heck am I going to find $15,000? I had no customers coming in. 4 o'clock, the phone went. My partner from Holland, cross-cultural trainer, said, Philip, I have to go to China next week, but something has come up in Holland where I can't go. Some urgent matter that he had to attend to. He said, would you go to China instead for
Right.
me? I said, looked at my diary. I said, Fons, I'm free. He said, oh, that's good. He said, and also you'll be happy. It's good money.
Mm.
$15,000.
Ah.
10 minutes before 4,
Wow.
I need $15,000.
Right.
4 o'clock, here's $15,000. So we're still learning about synchronicity. And although I've done a PhD
Mm-hmm.
and I'm writing some concepts down, we're still learning about it.
Yeah.
It's big things like, you know, choice of spouse and house.
Yeah.
I can tell you stories about that. And it's also about little things that just actually come together,
They just pop out.
just pop out.
Yeah.
Fadley, do you want to get that picture? Let me tell you a story. Sorry, we're in my office here. I want Fadley to just show you a picture and show that so the camera can see it.
All right. I think.
Now,
Can you see it there?
this is my gorgeous wife, and obviously wedding photos. One has a picture. We just moved 6 months ago from one part of Singapore to this great place we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
We had 250 boxes. Now, my lucky number is 9. My wife's lucky number is 6.
Mm.
And so whenever we see 69, we always think that means something special to us. So here I am opening the boxes in our new place. I came and looked at the picture of me and my wife,
Oh, is that what it is?
Guess what number they had on the top? That the
Wow.
packers had used out of 250 numbers. The picture of me and my wife just happened to be item number 69.
That's amazing,
I
yeah.
can put that back now.
Wow.
So all I'm saying is this a little thing, right? But isn't that amazing that somehow the lucky number for me and my wife happened to be 69, and it just happens to be the number given by the packers to that item to be moved here. So many different ways. I could talk lots more stories, but do you begin to get a flavor?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's it seems like there's like you said, a lot of different ways to look at what synchronicity is all about. It's about what you attract. It's about life supporting you through pronoia, and also it's about the simple coincidences that happen,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah, that's another way. You can describe synchronicity as like coincidences with meaning, or luck with meaning.
yeah, so I think also one of the key things was that you mentioned, especially in the first part, a lot of your stories about how synchronicity helped you make that decision. But you weren't sure at that point of time how it happened, right?
No,
So-
so what I've learned, and this is in my book that's coming out, and
Yeah.
based on my PhD, is that when you look backwards in your life, you see things happen for a reason.
Right.
So what I'm trying to do in my PhD and in my book is help people to begin to read the signs so they can connect the dots looking forward
Right.
in terms of how to make decisions going forward
Yeah.
and using synchronicity. So we know that synchronicity happens to most people.
Yeah.
Everybody listening, Fadli, I'm sure, has had times when, say your sister is in New York on a trip to New York, or she's studying in New York, and suddenly you, in the middle of the day, you have this strong sense of your sister and feeling like something's not quite right.
Right.
But you think, that's crazy, and you forget it. But that night you go home and there's an email from your sister saying, not so good today. I had real bad stomach and had to stay at home, and I had to go for some hospital tests. Now, all of us have that happen to us. Or we can think of a friend that we haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah.
2 days later, you bump into them.
Yep.
There they are. That is synchronicity. And it's to do with, and we could get very complicated here, Fadli, which I don't want to. But what I looked at in my PhD, there is something called quantum mechanics, quantum physics, which if you watch the Big Bang Theory, they talk a lot about quantum physics,
Yeah.
but it literally means that instead of us just being physical matter, we're also energy as well.
Yep. Yep.
The whole world is a magnetic field, and there is a concept called quantum entanglement.
Right.
And so I advise your viewers to look that up. Quantum entanglement.
Okay.
Just go research that. But it literally means we are energetically connected. So it's the beginnings of how to explain why synchronicity happens. So everybody knows that synchronicity happens. There are stories galore that tell of synchronicity.
Right.
And the great researcher into synchronicity was the psychotherapist Carl Jung,
Carl Jung. Yep.
who expounded on synchronicity. So it's an emerging, it's been around for thousands of years, because if the nature of the universe is quantum entanglement and quantum energy, then all through history, recorded time, we've had this ability. But only now are we really beginning to talk about it and write about it.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned that we are all energy forms, right? Even though we're physical matter, we're all energy forms. Is that where possibly that your energy and my energy, no matter the distance, could still be connected?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
In quantum physics, they've done experiments on this.
Okay.
They've actually taken matter, like one experiment, they took saliva from somebody's mouth,
Okay.
which is their DNA and is who they are. They took that saliva, so imagine Fadli here. So I took some saliva from his mouth.
Yeah.
I took it to a whole different part of the building. Imagine this is a massive building. I put it in a room under test conditions. And then Fadli's sitting here, and we expose him to frightening images of war
Okay.
or violence,
Right.
that he has an emotional reaction.
Uh-huh.
At the exact same time that he has the emotional reaction, his saliva, which is being observed a long way away, has an instantaneous reaction the same as he does.
Really?
And they found that, they said, this is strange. So they took it a few miles away.
Wow.
Then
Okay.
they took it to another country. Then they took it halfway around the world. Exactly the same thing they found. That when the person from whom the saliva came had an emotional reaction to an image that they saw, measuring the DNA of where that was somewhere else in the world, instantaneously had the same reaction.
That's real big. I don't know. I'm astounded by that.
Well,
Yeah.
that's quantum entanglement. That's
Mm.
quantum mechanics. So we are learning more about it. There are people who say, no, that's not true. That's not how physics works.
Right.
But there are enough people now who are saying that's how the world works.
Mm.
So what I decided to do,
Yep.
and I said to you that in my life I've always gone for new things that will help people grow.
Yep.
I got teams, I got culture, I attracted to me culture gurus.
Yeah.
I attracted to me team gurus without me doing anything. They just came my way
Right.
and said, if you know Dr. Meredith Belbin, because Fadley is a great teacher of the Belbin methodology, Belbin came my way. I just said, I need somebody who's got a good model that I can work with and use.
Mm.
Belbin came to me, he happened to be in Singapore, and said, would I represent him in this part of the world? So it continues to happen. And I said, this is what I want to do for my PhD.
Right.
And when we say Fadley said it's a grounded theory
Yeah.
PhD.
I was going to touch on that. Yeah.
Yeah, so grounded means you're doing original research from the ground up,
Okay.
meaning that I took 25 people
Mm-hmm.
who'd experienced synchronicity or out of the blue events coming their way. I didn't call it synchronicity because you can't bias their views.
Okay.
And so I asked them, how do these things happen? What do you think they mean?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the results?
Okay.
So that's my PhD research. It's called Grounded because it's building that theory
Right.
of how synchronicity works.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm involved in now is actually making that into a book,
Uh-huh.
the 9 keys of synchronicity, so I can share with people how you can begin to attract these things in your own life.
Right. And I want to touch on that a bit because as the name of your PhD study is Synchronicity and Leadership,
Yeah.
right? So how do you begin to put those two together then?
Well, the thing about it is that there are plenty of personal stories
Mm-hmm.
about synchronicity.
Right.
People seem very comfortable to share what happens in choosing a spouse,
Yeah.
what happens in choosing a house, what happens in choosing where to go on holiday, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But what happens in leadership is people are not so comfortable to talk about synchronicity
Okay.
because it doesn't seem to be logical.
Yeah. Not. Yeah.
And the
yeah.
business world and commercial world is full of logic.
Right.
On your MBA, you're taught how to analyze problems in a logical way.
Critical thinking. Yeah.
So decision making and problem solving is influenced by synchronicity.
Mm.
But leaders don't talk about it.
Mm.
And when I interviewed leaders for my PhD,
Yeah.
they said they don't talk about it because they don't want their colleagues to think they're crazy.
Mm. Okay.
They don't want their bosses to think they're crazy.
Right.
You can't go to your boss and say, okay, I want to invest $1 million in our next project in Cambodia. And your boss says, how did you come to that decision, Philip? And I say, well, I had a dream last night and I saw Cambodia and therefore I think we should invest $1 million.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, folks, and this is why it's such a fascinating subject, because I'm going to devote the rest of my life, I think, to this topic.
Okay.
For example, you've all heard of Chernobyl. Chernobyl is where there was a Russian nuclear reactor that exploded
Right.
and leaked, and many, many people died
Yeah.
around that particular Chernobyl, Russian town, Ukrainian town, I think, in Chernobyl.
I'm not sure.
I think it's
yeah.
Ukrainian. Anyway, you've all heard of Chernobyl. What they found later on is that the week before Chernobyl happened and the leakage,
Right.
radioactive leakage happened, people had intuitions and premonitions and dreams that a disaster was about to happen.
Okay.
So there's something about magnetic energy
Right.
that touches human beings that allows us to have a sense of things that are about to happen. So I chose leadership and synchronicity because I'm a leadership consultant.
Yep.
And so the second book, so the first book is going to be about synchronicity, explaining what it is.
Yeah.
The second book is going to be specifically leadership and synchronicity, so that we can begin to apply it to the world of leadership.
So in a sense, it's like as a manager in a company, a corporation, you are able to make decisions based on your gut, on your guidance?
Yes, I mean, your intuition, your gut, and synchronicity, kind of similar in one sense, distinct, but are connected.
Right.
Now, what I want to say is people are already making decisions with synchronicity.
Okay.
They're just not saying so.
Mm.
In fact, one very senior guy who managed a large European company in an Asian country, when I interviewed him, he said, "Philip, I make all of my decisions using my intuition. Please don't tell my staff. Especially don't tell my boss." So I think we're in a part of world history, let's go big here, where head and heart are coming together. We need both. Mostly in business, and not just in business, in our lives too, we're governed by logic.
Yeah.
But a lot of decisions are made using intuition, using your gut, both of those terms people use, but also based on your heart, what your heart is saying. And so what I want to do in leadership and business is to make it normal for people to do a head and a heart analysis in terms of how to make decisions.
Yeah, I understand that, because like I think especially growing up, the way we've been brought up is that, especially here in Singapore, is that it's more to do with the head than the heart, right? We have a lot to do with, if you have a problem, what's the most logical way to overcome this? How do we solve this? And I think that's where, if to take a leap of faith and say that I'm following my gut, that's going to be a new concept for a lot of people, especially in the business sense.
Well, it's interesting. Lee Kuan Yew was a great leader.
Right.
I love Lee Kuan Yew and what example of leadership he showed. But there is a passage in a book, I think it was, or in a speech that he gave, where he said, "I don't want emotions ruling our decisions here in Singapore."
Okay.
And so I think that the great part that Singapore plays in the world, and aren't we glad we live in Singapore
Yeah.
with COVID that's going on at the moment, how Singapore has actually managed that. The UK just announced that they are now taking passengers from Singapore to the UK without having to do quarantine.
Okay.
And that's all a tribute to what the government's done. And the government is fantastic because it's logical, it's analytical, it's linear, and does projects in a really good way. But I bet you that as well as the head, sometimes the heart plays a part too.
Right.
Because when we make decisions, both are there. And especially in today's world, which is very volatile and complex,
Right.
where decisions have to be made just like that, your heart and your intuition and synchronicity has a part to play.
Most definitely, yeah.
And you can attract amazing things. Have some fun with synchronicity. When I got married, and you saw the beautiful picture of my wife, when I got married, I was helped by the songs of the famous country singer John Denver. You all heard of John Denver?
Not our generation. Not my generation.
Did you know John Denver?
No, not before you mentioned it.
Okay, so country roads.
That song I know.
All right, so that was John Denver's song.
Right.
Now, in my generation, I was in the process, I'd met my future wife and was deciding, is she the one?
Okay.
And so I went to a personal development program called Money and You, which was tremendously helpful, but mostly helpful because the songs of John Denver were played at that seminar.
Okay.
And they were moving songs around love, around purpose, and around meaning.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I absolutely came out of that seminar knowing that this was the woman I wanted to ask to marry me.
Okay.
Absolute certain.
Mm.
Which is what I needed at the time, because I was 40 years old. I'd been all over the world, but had never found the one.
Right.
So those songs helped me know that this is the one. So Friday evening, and actually Friday evening, in this same apartment where we are now,
Okay.
in 1993 or 2 or 4 or something like that,
Right.
I said, I want to say thank you to John Denver.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that? Do I write a letter, John Denver, America, and post it and see what happens?
Uh-huh.
Friday night, went to bed thinking I'd like to do that, but I don't know how.
Right.
Opened the newspaper the following day, and there the headline was, John Denver coming to Singapore next week.
Wow. Okay.
And I told a friend of mine who'd actually also attended the seminar that that was my thought. And then I saw that John Denver was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Just told it to her. In the afternoon, I got a phone call from a woman who said, Philip, you don't know me, but I am the sales manager at the Shangri-La Hotel. John Denver is staying with us next week. I hear you're interested in getting a message to him. Send me a fax. I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
She told me later she had the fax in her hand
Mm-hmm.
and was thinking, how do I get hold of John Denver?
Yeah.
The lift opened. John Denver walked out. Mr.
Really?
Denver, I have a letter from you from one of your fans.
Wow.
That night, Sunday night,
Uh-huh.
John Denver called me at home.
Amazing.
Now, how does that happen, folks? Friday night, I want to say thank you to John Denver. 48 hours later, John Denver called me and left a nice message.
What did you say? Yeah.
Hi, Philip. I'm glad that you enjoy my songs. I'd love to meet you for dinner. I asked him for dinner with you and your friends, but I'm real busy next week. So glad my songs. I remember he said, glad my songs work for you.
Okay.
Now, remember,
Wow.
these were the songs that confirmed I should ask this woman to marry me.
Hmm.
And the fact that the guy who wrote the songs appeared in my life within 48 hours was a confirmation that I asked her hand in marriage. Luckily, she said yes. So you'll find synchronicity happening in all sorts of ways, Fadli,
Right.
connected with the personal domain.
Hmm.
And so we are work people, we are human beings with a personal life. Synchronicity, if you imagine synchronicity is like connecting with this vibration in the world. We are vibrations.
Yeah.
All of you, I'm sure, have been into a room and you've felt a vibration
Hmm.
from people that were there before. You felt anger, or you felt love, or you felt happiness, or you felt sadness.
Yep.
The vibration is there. So what synchronicity is about is getting in touch with that vibration by matching the vibration with who you are and bringing that event to you.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Those are some amazing stories, Philip, I have to say. So, okay. So my question to you now is, I think we've delved a lot into what synchronicity is all about and how it is applied to your life. For the streamers and the viewers now, how do they implement this into their life? Do you have like a formula on how to get
Yeah, my
synchronicity?
book is The 9 Keys of Synchronicity.
Maybe if you could share a bit about.
So, yeah, I mean, and I'm teasing this out from my research
Okay.
for my PhD. So what the participants in my research
Mhm.
told me was, how did synchronicity happen? What was happening at the time?
Mhm.
What do they think it means? And what were the results?
Right.
So I've broken that down into steps. So number one is you have to know about synchronicity and believe it exists.
Be aware of it, isn't it?
Be aware that these guidings that you have, these promptings that you have to do this,
Right.
go this road and not this road,
Mhm.
are something called synchronicity.
Okay.
So it's not old wives' tales, it's not voodoo, it's
Okay.
actually a system that's been studied and talked about for many, many years. And that's really crucial to begin with.
Mhm. Yep.
So when these things happen to you, don't just cast them away. So primarily, it's watching for out of the blue happenings in your life.
Okay. Mhm.
So that's also about being aware of what it is you want to do in your life. It might be a project, it might be a spouse, it might be a friend, it might be a job, It might be a new country to go to.
Right.
Whatever's on your mind that you're wanting to solve in your life,
Okay.
be aware of that. So it's a very important skill to be aware of your needs.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just go through their lives and don't think about their needs. They're not aware of what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be aware of them. And then when you're aware of them, go through each day with a mindset that says, I'm looking out for the unusual things that happen to come my way.
The unusual things.
Different things,
Right.
out of the run of the mill
Mm-hmm.
of things that happen in your life.
Yeah.
And when that happens, to begin then to look for how it might apply to the issue that you're facing.
Mm.
And then often what will happen is that you'll be guided by your intuition. We now know that there is such a thing called intuition,
Yeah.
which comes from the heart energy.
Okay.
Intuition comes from the heart energy. So you might be going home. Let's say you've got a difficult problem at work
Mm-hmm.
to solve, or you're not happy in your current job and you're thinking about what's next for me.
Right.
And so you go home and you're tired, but there's a party going on that night, but you feel exhausted and you don't want to go to the party.
Yeah.
If your intuition says, Fadli, I know you're tired, but you've got to go to that party.
Mm-hmm.
All of us have these promptings.
Yep. Yep.
Intuition working.
Mm.
When you go to the party, you bump into a guy, and straight away you get talking about a new opportunity he has coming up in the Philippines for a manager for a project that he's doing, which fits exactly what it is you're looking for.
Right.
That's synchronicity. So intuition is what guides you to move and explore something. The out of the blue synchronicity is meeting the guy at the party who then opens up your life for a whole new job that you didn't even think was there.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So.
Those are things. And that's two. That's two. That's key number 4 and number 5. And these are about the process of synchronicity. 6, key number 6, be grateful.
Gratitude.
Celebrate what
Right.
comes your way. When things happen to you, like when I met John Denver, I thought, how the heck did that happen? And I just was so happy and grateful. It's kind of like life stops and you marvel at this being possible.
Right.
So it's really important that when these great things come your way, to be thankful and to show gratitude.
That opens up more opportunities, I guess. More
Well,
occurrences like that.
it's a funny thing, Bradley. And people might think I'm making this up, but there is a concept called the synchronicity of synchronicity.
Okay, that sounds like Inception. I mean, like you go beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the synchronicity of synchronicity is a belief that this is interesting. Let me look out for more such things in my life.
Okay.
Because the mind controls.
Yeah.
So if you say when a synchronicity happens to you, that's just luck.
Yeah.
Nothing
dismiss
to
it.
it. It's just coincidence. It's just luck. What you do is you switch off the tap for more synchronicities happening. So it's been my experience, and not just mine, but other people's too,
Yeah.
is that when you are curious about a synchronicity happening to you and you go on to want to explore that even more, that's called the synchronicity of synchronicity.
Right. Okay.
And it leads you to a sense of celebration and marveling at this amazing world in which we live, where anything can happen overnight. And so it actually leads you away from, I'm always going to be stuck like this. I'm in a rut and life will always be like this. And that can happen to big political situations too.
Yeah.
For those of us who are old enough, we remember the Berlin Wall coming down that
Berlin Wall,
separated East and West Germany.
Yep.
We never thought we'd see that. We never thought we'd see the end of apartheid in South Africa. We thought that was just going to be blood and guts. And I know it's been a difficult path, but both of those happened. So it's about, and I think this is a major message to your viewers, it's about saying that you make your own life. Life will bring you these opportunities,
Right.
and you can either say yes or no.
Mm. And your gut will guide you to make the right decision, right?
Well, gut, but I think it's more than that. I think the opportunity is presented to you.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow it's just presented to you. And then it's your response to that that causes you to be successful or not.
Mm.
I got a house here in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen my house in Queens Avenue, right?
Yep.
An enormous black and white house in Queens Avenue. I got that within one day.
Mm.
I was driving to cold storage with my wife, and we'd been thinking about moving to somewhere a bit greener. And so I'm driving, I can see it in my mind's eye. I'm driving to cold storage. A voice in me says, turn left. So I turn left. There we were in the middle of about 5 or 6 black and white houses.
Uh-huh.
And I looked around and I thought, oh, these are beautiful.
Yeah.
And that made me think more. Maybe black and white houses are good. This is 10:30 in the morning. I went to cold storage, and that time they had adverts for houses.
Mm-hmm.
There was a black and white house, but they were so expensive. And I said to my wife, I will only take a black and white house if it's 5,500 per month.
Okay.
That's our budget.
Mm.
This was now 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Came back home. I went to the Funan Center, the old Funan Center,
The old one, right?
which I loved. I like the new one, but I love the old one better.
Mm.
I bumped into my old boss from Reuters,
Oh, okay.
and he was now working for another company. He was showing somebody around, new to the company, around Funan Center. He said, oh, Philip, good to see you. Join us for lunch. Sitting down over lunch, and I can see myself now sitting down for lunch. And I said, oh, Patrick, we're looking for a black and white house.
Mm.
He said, I know where there is one. Now, that weekend, his wife's friend who lived in Singapore during the war lived in a beautiful black and white house in Sembawang.
Mm-hmm.
And the weekend before, this was Monday, the weekend before, he'd gone to see this house. And he said, Philip, I think it's empty and available. I said, why? He said, because there were no furniture in it.
Right.
And it was open. I said, okay, thank you. Left my lunch, grabbed my wife, drove out to Queens Avenue in Sembawang, and there was this gorgeous house. 28,000 square feet, a beautiful main house, a 4-bedroom house at the back. Perfect.
Mm.
I called the government department because they were renting them out. And I said, got this house in Queens Avenue. Is it still available? Yes, it's still available. I said, how much is it? Guess what they said? 5,500. That was 3:30 in the afternoon. At 10:30, I left my home to go to cold storage, knowing I'd like another house,
Right.
but not knowing how to get one.
Mm.
5 hours later, we had this beautiful house where we spent 12 amazing years.
Mm.
So, and this, a lot of people say when I tell these stories, oh, that just happens to you because you're different, you're special.
Mm.
No, I'm
Is
not.
that the case?
No, I'm not. Anyone can have this happen to them. So I say to you, I say to you, the people listening, I mean, A, it's a great show. You've got a host of the show who's already got Pronoya, which means life supports you.
Yep.
It is real. Those things that you want to achieve in your life can be achieved. But you've got to have courage. You've got to actually turn down jobs that you know aren't right for you, or turn down relationships that you know aren't right for you, to find a space that opens up for the right thing to come to you. Sadly, I'm doing a lot of talking. Is it okay?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think you've really touched on what the concept of synchronicity is and how we can ourselves can also start being aware of how it plays a part in our lives.
Okay.
Right? So
Good,
I think
good,
that's
good.
that's really good. That's wonderful.
Good.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm a little out of topics now. So because I think
that's
you've
okay.
covered more or less what it's all about. So I think the only way to end it off would be, what inspiring message would you have for the viewers and the streamers?
You can do things that you don't know you can do
Mm-hmm.
if you recognize that somehow out there is an energy supporting you. And by the way, let me finish with a crazy story,
Sure.
but a profound story, saying that synchronicity goes beyond just this life. Final story.
Mm-hmm.
I was appearing on Singapore TV. There was a period for a year or two when I appeared on the news early in the morning. 7 o'clock was the show. 6 o'clock I had to be there. They gave me stories. It was called Views on the News.
Views and
And the guy would say, we have Philip Merry. It was live. Glad to have Philip Merry on the show, who's now going to take give you his point of view on XYZ.
Right.
So one morning, there I was, preparing to go on the show, getting ready at 5 o'clock in the morning, because we had to be there at 6, because the show started at 7. And I look at my mobile phone. And as I'm looking at my mobile phone, there's a message which says, message from your father. Message from your dad, sorry, not your father. What the heck? I opened the email, and it was from a professional psychic friend of mine in America. Now, why was I surprised? Because my dad had died 2 years before. Here was a message from my psychic friend in America, who, was doing, it wasn't some crazy woman, she was doing this professionally, said, your dad has been bothering me for the last few days with a message for you. Here's the message. And I'm looking at the email. It said, son, I'm very proud of you and the work you are doing. Where I am at the moment, I'm enjoying myself. We do a lot of dancing.
Okay.
Oh, really? This? And then it said, I especially like the work you're doing on the television box. You'll be doing more of this. Now, I'm about to go and appear on TV. My friend in America had no idea of that work. But this meant that somewhere in the universe, my father, who had passed on, knew that I was about to appear on the TV and sending me a message.
Right.
So we've talked about the personal domain. We've talked about work. But that was something so much more.
Spiritual. Yeah.
It's spiritual, and it talks about our ability to have people who've passed on influence us and impact us. So my message to you is believe in synchronicity, follow synchronicity, and if you're inclined to do so, when my book comes out, have a look at the book. But remember that behind every synchronicity that happens to you is a miracle waiting to happen that will take you down the path to a more fulfilling life.
Wow. That's amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Philip.
You're welcome, Fadli.
I think you guys can see for yourselves why he's been so successful being a consultant, with his wonderful voice and, of course, with his beautiful messages. I think his stories tell a lot of inspiration. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And thank you very much, Philip, for sharing all of this.
Well, thank you, Fadli. I have to say, when we were working together, it was some of the happiest working times for me. Fadli made a great contribution to our company. He says that I taught him, but he taught me a lot. There was stuff that I didn't understand, and Fadli was so good at teaching me as well.
It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street.
Thank you very much, Philip. Yeah, it was great working with you. I think you've really, like I mentioned right at the start, you've kickstarted this journey about listening to people, about talking to people, finding inspiration, growing. So it's been a real pleasure having you as my last guest. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My delight, Fadli, my delight.
And so with that, before I end this off, I also, again, just want to say a big thank you to all the streamers and viewers out there who have supported us during this journey. You guys have been amazing. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode particularly, because it's one that's very personal for me as well. And thank you for all the former guests as well for coming on and supporting us on the Deep Culture Podcast. I couldn't have done it without you guys, so much love to send out to you guys. And we'll see where things go in the near future. So with that, any last words, Philip, before we close off the season?
Thank you to you, Fadli. I think you're doing a great job, and I look forward to season 2.
Oh, wonderful. We'll see where that comes and how that goes. Thank you very much, Philip, for your time. By the way, if you guys don't know, we're actually recording this at about 12 midnight now. Right? So thank you so much, Philip, for staying up.
Welcome.
And we will see you guys on the next season of the Deep Culture Podcast. Thanks, everyone. Signing off. Bye.